Welcome to Epic Begins with One Step Forward. I'm your host, Zander Sprague, and I am so delighted that you're joining me today. I wanted to start off with a thought of the day. Your first epic steps really do matter. You've got big dreams, but how do you step into your epic and make those dreams start to come true? Well, you want to know what? It all begins with that simple one step forward. You've dreamed of writing a book. How does that start? Honestly, it starts with that first word, that first sentence. And if you just keep doing it, pretty soon you have a whole book. Remember that perfectionism does kill progress. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to be taking those steps forward. Remember, do one small thing today and the rest will follow. Trust me, I know. I wrote 3 books and I'm not a writer. I wanted to give you an update of one of my previous podcast guests, Juanita Wheeler. Okay, she helps people do TEDx talks in Australia and around the world. And she is still helping people to do what they dream of doing. Get on that TEDx stage. The information that she shares is so valuable because getting on that TEDx stage is a lot more difficult than you would think. Those unique ideas, the way in which you have to formulate your TEDx talk, and she gives you all the information. So if you haven't seen that and you want a TEDx talk, I encourage you to go listen to that episode on the Epic Begins with One Step Forward podcast. Available on all of the podcast platforms. You could also watch the episode on the YouTube channel, Epic Begins with One Step Forward. Now today I am really excited for my guest. It's Marian Meadows. She's a licensed social worker. And Marian, welcome. Tell us a little about your background.
Thank you, Zander. Thank you for inviting me. My background is as a licensed clinical social worker with a specialty in school social work. So I get to have the fun job of being on school sites, supporting kids from TK to 12. And I currently help oversee wellness centers at our secondary schools in our local school district. So I get to be with teenagers all day. It's actually really great.
That's cool. Mm-hmm. Now, I always believe in full disclosure. I know Marianne because she was my supervisor for my internship for my licensing hours. And so Marianne and I have known each other for many years. She was very instrumental in helping me learn everything I needed so that I could become a licensed professional clinical counselor. So, Marianne, you spent most of your career doing school-based counseling. One of the things that we hear about in the news a lot is perhaps and I don't want to say the rise, because I don't think it's a rise, but the recognition of anxiety and depression in our adolescent children. What is your observation from your years of experience about that?
Great question. So I think a lot about development, right? When we talk about kids, even adults, we're in a developmental stage, right? So when we're talking about young people, we always start thinking about what developmental stage they're at, and for especially our tweens and our teens and our late teens, we're really pack animals. Humans are pack animals. I had to look it up because I wasn't sure if my cat was like actually enjoying my company, and I looked up animals and humans, well, other mammals, and it turns out that cats are not pack animals, but humans are. Yeah. So when there are disruptions in the connection and the connectiveness of the community, and especially for teens who are trying to figure out who they are, that can be very anxiety reduced or increasing. And the way to reduce that anxiety is actually to help kids connect to each other. Absolutely.
And not to sound too much like, the old man, but in my day, one thing that I observed when I was doing my internship was with the advent of social media, our smartphones, sadly, a lot of adolescents have lost the ability for interpersonal communication. Texting does not take place, it doesn't take the place of getting to talk to someone, paying attention to all the nonverbal cues, reading how someone's reacting to what you're doing. Teenagers are noted for perhaps using sarcasm heavily. The problem is with texting, you lose that unless you spend like 5 sentences explaining that you're being sarcastic. Correct. So what is your kind of commentary on this, I don't know, loss of ability to communicate?
What I see with the teens and young teens that I work with and their families is really about exactly what you said, is that this phone, this device is sort of taking attention away from the regular behaviors that we do to learn how to communicate with each other. And teens are still learning, right? And as a parent of teenagers, I'm learning to communicate differently with my teens because I have one kid away at school, right? So I'm lucky to get a text in that way. But the device, again, is a distraction from the learning environments that we have had in the past, like sitting around the dinner table. Yeah. That's where we're learning to give and take and to disagree, but still stay connected. Even those, and I can say back in my day, I was spending hours on the phone with my friends after school, and that actually was a lot about learning how to process information and vocabulary and emotional identification that kids just don't get through a cell phone anymore. And you're right, sarcasm is another piece. It's hard to tell what the tone of voice is over a device.
Right. I mean, I know I've run into that myself where I might, a common thing that adolescents will say, like that disbelief of "shut up," right? Well, you get what I'm saying because you hear me, you see that I'm smiling, that I'm not telling you to be quiet. However, over text, I can't control how you're reading it. You may read it literally and think that I'm telling you to be quiet and I don't want to talk to you, when in fact that's not my intent. I know I talk to many of my clients just about interpersonal communication and how important it is, because even with all of the tech that we have, in the work world, you actually, as an adult, do need to know how to work with people, talk with people, read what's going on, and again, not to sound like the old man, but like I had a front row seat of seeing that wasn't happening. One of the big parts of adolescence sometimes are the interpersonal relationships, dating of sorts, and many of the clients I had would say, "Oh, they broke up with me over text," and in my day, if I wanted to break up with someone, the least personal way was over the phone. Maybe write a note. But even then, there was a lot that went into that. I had to get that note to that person. But a lot of times I actually had to do it in person, and now it's like, sorry, I'm not interested anymore. And it wreaks, I think, all kinds of emotional havoc on people because there's no feedback.
Absolutely. Yeah, it really, it becomes a shorthand, but can also be a cover for having to actually talk about how you feel, right?
Yeah.
So we find that one of the areas we try to teach young people, and we do this in our district, K-12, we're teaching a social emotional learning curriculum.
Yeah.
And that is to help kids identify feelings in themselves, but also learn to identify other people's feelings. And a lot of that has to do with facial expressions.
Yeah.
So it's teaching kids to look, like if your face is like this, do they look happy? No, they don't look happy. What could be the other things that they're feeling? So it's a lost art unless we explicitly teach kids how to do that. And again, kids, TK-12 and also adults, because we're on our phones too.
We are, absolutely. I'm not saying, oh, I'm not, I am, but I'm also aware that I've had, honestly, multiple times trying to share some of that, teach some of that social emotional skill set. And I guess being a historian, I look back and go, okay, well, what was my experience of my peers and stuff? And we didn't have that because it was just part of our experience. And you were talking about being pack animals, liking connection, and we do, absolutely. Part of that is the social emotional, like reading the nonverbal cues. The fact of the matter is that a large part of communication is the nonverbal part.
Absolutely. And teenagers, again, back to development, their brain is primed to be very, very self-conscious. And it has some self-esteem implications, but it also means that they're able to feel how, get a sense of how they feel in the company of other people. And so they're very conscious of what other people are doing and saying and looking and the jokes they're making and whispering or laughing. And, teenagers kind of feel like they're the middle of everything. They're in like the fishbowl. But developmentally, it's so that they can figure out how to connect with others in the pack so that they can be successful. So it's literally like an evolutionary piece around connecting and staying in safety with other people.
Absolutely. And one of the things I always laughed about was I would talk, I talk to my clients, and also, they're not quite, I got one who's technically a teenager still, she's 19, so soon, but I too have daughters about your daughter's ages, and talking about what's going on. And this adolescents are incredibly self-centered. I get that. They're trying to figure out who they are. But I would say often, you think that everyone else is looking at you, but everyone else is afraid everyone else is looking at them, and no one's looking at anyone else. As you walk around this high school of 3,000 people, you think everyone's looking at you and paying attention to how your hair looks, what you're wearing, what you're eating, what you're saying, what you're listening to. But there are 2,999 other people thinking that everyone else is looking at them, and you want to know, no one's actually looking at anyone else because they're so self-consumed. And I'm not saying that in a negative way, that's just adolescence. You're trying to figure out who you are. And it's hard to try on those identities online.
Absolutely.
Because of the anonymity where maybe you try a new haircut and you post it up on one of your social media platforms and people just slam you. You don't know who they are, but you take it very personally.
Absolutely. Yes, and the kids do. And the social media world creates a whole other fishbowl. Right, so it is really stressful for teens to feel like they're in a fishbowl in person at school, say, and then they go online, and because they have a public profile, they're in a whole other fishbowl where people can comment on, often more directly, anonymously on their picture or what it is that they're doing. So it's double stressful for teens, especially if they have access to the social media. And I've recently been on very much the message about social media, and that is to delay. Go as long as you possibly can, get them out of middle school before they have access, because all the research is coming out saying that's extremely stressful. Absolutely.
And one of the things I know was if I wanted to deliver some unpleasant news in 5th grade or whatever, I had to do it. Again, I might have to do it on the phone, but it was me talking to you, or I had to do it in person. But there was a lot of learning, and I don't know that I see that. And I have a counseling practice. I have a client who's well past their adolescence, and yet I see some of that social emotional learning is not there. and I'm helping them through this process. And I'm like, wow, what happened?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, again, schools are such a great place, and I'm biased as a school social worker, but schools are such a great place to bring some of that education, because when you're in a classroom of 35 kids or you're in a school community of 33,000, you have to learn the basics around, again, feelings identification, identifying other people's feelings and being able to communicate it so that you can get along in a big class or on a big soccer team or in a really big high school.
Yeah.
And some adults just haven't had that practice, right?
Yeah.
Because we weren't learning, when we were going to school, they weren't teaching, at least mine, they weren't teaching me social emotional learning.
We did not have social emotional education in part, but I think part of that was because it simply wasn't necessary. We were simply having that was just part of growing up. All right, so what are things that you work with adolescents and parents to help reduce that level of anxiety, create more social emotional learning opportunities?
So I think a lot about my own experience as a parent of two teens, right? And my behavior at home when I am with them, and how much I'm on my phone, how much I'm not on my phone, and the attempts I make to regulate myself so that I can be present for them. So that's kind of where foundational is to get off the devices and to self-regulate in a way that models healthy emotion management, but also maybe they don't want to take a walk with you, but when you get back, you're in a better mood and you can meet them with whatever they need.
Right.
So step one is that self, right?
Right.
Beyond that is really working with your teen. They push because they want to be independent, but they're not ready to be fully independent. So it's this constant ocean wave of they know it all. Oops, they don't know all of it. Back and forth, and getting comfortable with that. So that when the time comes where they're overstressed or they're overscheduled, and I could go on and on about that, but as adults, as the parent, we still have to be the limit setter. We still have to say, you're too tired, you need to go to bed and not do this thing. Or you're not going to take 5 AP classes, you're going to take 2 AP classes. We have to set limits, but it has to be in communication with the teen so that they understand the reasons why you're making that decision, because they deserve that.
Absolutely. And something I know I heard often, because I said so, that is not an actual reason.
Right.
And the same way that when you ask your teenager and they're like, how are you? I'm fine.
Right.
And they're not fine. That's not the full answer.
Yeah.
And so on both sides, I try and keep in mind remind myself of what was my experience at their age. Was it acceptable for me to push back, and say, no, I'm actually not doing that. I remember for me when I was in college, I was probably about 20 or something, that switch of asking if I can go out with my friends to telling my parents I was going out with my friends. And that was I remember that was a big thing, but I'm like, well, I'm old enough, I can vote, I'm 21, I'm able to drink legally, I'm able to, serve in the military, go to jail, be treated as an adult. I should act like an adult. And, I remember telling my dad at one point, he was treating me like I was 4. And I said, I'm not acting like I'm 4, so I want you to treat me as if I'm 16. I'm not asking to be a peer, but I'm asking you to respect the fact that I am acting responsibly. You may not like you may not like that I'm going out with my friends again. But this is a normal thing. Now, I get that most 16-year-olds aren't going, no, the way I'm behaving is appropriate. One of the things that we sadly hear about is, teenage self-harm. And that goes along, unfortunately, with some of the social media stuff, caring so much about the likes and the negative comments and stuff. What have you seen in your time? Is it really increasing, or is it just we have a lot more outlets to tell us what's going on? You know what I mean?
Yeah, you know, given all the data that came out of the pandemic around youth mental health, it does look like there's been an uptick especially during that time, because there was so much isolation, right?
Gosh, yes.
Yeah, and when it comes to self-harm, we know that self-harm happens when a kid, or an adult for that matter, is holding something so heavy or so intense that their regular coping mechanisms don't work, and often they feel really numb, or they are disconnected from their feelings, right? It's not necessarily a cry to die or to have suicidal thoughts, but it is a extreme coping mechanism, right? So when I'm thinking about the students that I know in both individual and group settings and in community care, those students actually really do better when they have people to listen to them. And it can be their parent or guardian, but we have to be in a place to receive whatever it is they're talking about and not judge it, and really, really just listen and validate. It's very hard to do as an adult, right? Because we want to fix. And the kids are like, I don't want to fix. And that's why they go talk to someone else who will just listen and validate. Yeah. So we have to, it's an art. This raising healthy teenagers is a total art, and I know there's science too, but when it comes to self-harm, they're really holding something major, and they've exhausted all their other ways of trying to cope. So we really want to support students, kids who are in that place, because it's a very isolating place to be.
Yeah, it really is. And my experience was oftentimes having one of the things that we developed was the drop-in. And that's been incredibly successful at helping that in the moment I perceive that I'm having, they think it's a crisis, we look at it and go, your mom taking your cell phone away is not the big crisis that you think that it is. Or your dad. I don't want to just blame the moms. But so that ability to say, here, let me get the Band-Aid I need right now. And then they return to class versus nothing happens. They have no one they feel that they have no one to talk to.
Right. Absolutely.
Certainly, we hear a lot more, and it's great, that mental health is getting a lot more destigmatized. We're talking more about mental health. There are famous people talking about their mental health. But schools are doing, I think, a lot of schools around the country, I don't have any data to back it up, but I'm aware that there's a lot more. There are wellness centers, there's counseling available, there's resources to help the adolescents. Is your knowledge that it has been helpful for the adolescent population that you've been working with over your career? Because the advent of wellness centers on campus and stuff, that's a fairly new, that's like in the last maybe 10 years, but I'm going to say more like 5 to 8. So
yeah, absolutely. So it used to, our counties, kind of Alameda County, Contra Costa County, have had a model of school-based health centers. So they were medical places that kids could come, which is amazing. And in the context that you and I have worked, and in particularly in Alameda County, there's a portion of schools that have created wellness centers first without the medical clinic, and that is to meet the behavioral health needs of students. So what we have found over time is that students, instead of just staying home when they don't feel well, they'll come to school. So they're surrounded by positive adults, they're getting food, they're getting their instruction, and there's literally a door that they can walk in and say, I need to talk to someone. You were that person 1,000 times, right? I was that person maybe 5.
Yeah.
That's why we have such amazing people in the wellness centers, is so a student can walk in cold and say, I need to talk to someone right now. And we have them. We walk them through. It might be that the phone got taken, but it may be other major thing that we've never heard from this kid at all. So And to your point, we're able to support them, de-escalate them, get them their basic needs, and send them back to class into that positive environment.
Yeah, and one of the stories I wanted to share. I mean, I know you know this. I was running a group with for anxiety, and one of the students said that she didn't feel 100% that day, but she wasn't going to miss group. Right. So she ended up coming to school a day where she normally would not have come to school. She said she found the group so helpful that she showed up so she didn't miss a day of learning, simply because she wanted that access to that mental health group.
That's right.
And I took that as a win for the student, that they didn't miss out on a day of learning.
Absolutely. And they made a choice for their own mental health, which is what we want them to learn as they go to be an adult in the big wide world, is be able to support themselves and find help.
Definitely, definitely. What are just a few, we have just a moment more here, but what are a few things that you could share with parents to help their kids?
Really try to create those all family moments. It can be at the dinner table, it can be going out to ice cream, it can be everybody goes to soccer practice and you go have pizza afterwards. Finding those times. Teens aren't always going to plug into those, but if you offer them regularly, they will plug in at some point, and it allows for that connectivity, because they're also trying to be independent. So create those environments. And second, self-care, right? Self-regulate, take care of yourself, model it, do the walks, do the meditation, do the Sudoku or the puzzles that help your mind calm down, so your kids can see that. Definitely. And helps you meet them in a better place.
Definitely, definitely. Well, this has been, we could talk obviously for hours. You and I have talked for hours about mental health. But I want to thank you so much for coming in and sharing your incredible knowledge. Such an important conversation, certainly one that is not a one and done. It's an ongoing conversation. There's so much learning going on in the mental health field about adolescent mental health, anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, just a laundry list of challenges. It's so great that you and other people are out there helping adolescents. Do you have any parting thoughts for us?
Just again, the teenagers are amazing. They really are. They're creative, they're beautiful, they're risk takers. Just take a minute to breathe and to acknowledge where they're at and really see the beauty in this stage that they're in, because they'll eventually be adults. So enjoy it while you can.
Absolutely. It goes by all too quickly.
It's very fast.
It does. Thank you so much for coming in, Marian.
Thank you for having me.
I want to remind everyone that if you're ready to begin your epic journey, go to epicbegins.com, and you can follow me on Instagram at epicbegins.com, YouTube at epicbegins, and remember that if you want to begin your epic journey and you need some help, go to epicbegins.com. My name is Zander Sprague, and I want to remind you that epic choices lead to the epic life that you want.